Hello, fellow time travelers, and welcome back to the Doctor Who Target Book Club, the podcast in which we undertake the monumental task of discussing, in story order, all of the Doctor Who novelizations. My name is Tony Whitt, and today we again have our three-person discussion panel, including our so-called expert who's been a Doctor Who fan since 1979. That would be me. There's also our intermediate-level casual fan who has seen several episodes but has not previously read any of the books until these podcasts, and this time it's none other than Dalton Hughes. Hello, Dalton.
Hello.
And finally, we have the novice fan who has seen little to none of the original series and has not read any of the books. This time around, Sheena was going to be here with us, but that lucky so-and-so was off on vacay, so she's not here. This time around, it's the wise and wonderful Alyson Fitch-Safreed. Hello, Alyson.
I'm just now learning, as we speak, that I am the consolation guest, not the first choice. The drama begins immediately.
No, you're the interloper. Isn't that what Jenny said the time that she did it? The interloper. Interloper.
Well, I think we were initially going to try to do, like, 4 of us. We were going to just have 2.
That may still happen, and you're welcome to those once we have, broken you, so to speak.
It's too late, Tony.
It's too late, yeah. Speaking of which...
Am I going to be broken by the end of the taping?
Probably.
Is that the plan?
Probably, because this month...
As a fan or just as a total human being, I'll be broken.
Yes. All the above.
Yes.
This month we're getting double the Dicks. Terrance Dicks, that is, since both of the novels we're reading this month are written by that most prolific of Doctor Who novelizers. In this episode, we're discussing the novelization of the 9th Doctor Who story, Planet of Giants, which, incredibly, was the opener of the 2nd season of the show. Imagine that, this story opened the 2nd season. Without further ado, here are some fast facts.
Doctor Who, Planet of Giants, adapted by Terrance Dicks from the script by Lewis Marks that aired from 10/31/64 to 11/14/64, published by Target Books in 1990. As of this recording in May of 2017, this title is currently out of print, but is available as a BBC audiobook, 112 pages.
Oh boy. You may have noticed something upon looking at... Actually, no, you won't have noticed this, because I'm going to pass around the print version of this, and as you open it, you may notice something very odd. Well, Dalton will definitely notice it. Alyson might not, because you don't know the print size of the regular Target books, but if you flip to the middle, you'll find that the print size is large print. It's huge.
That's much bigger than
It's much bigger than the norm. 112 pages at that size of print. It's massive.
It's normally like a 10 point, like a small kind of like pulp novel size, and this is like more like a 12 point, 13, 14
Well, the
point.
PDF you sent was about 84 pages, and it
Yeah.
was regular page layout. It wasn't Kindle layout.
The PDF is closer to the normal size that they are. This one is this is a lot bigger than...
Yeah, because they were trying to get a page count over 100 pages for this ridiculously thin story.
So they did that first year composition trick of bigger point size to get a larger page count.
Yes, I had somebody that I was tutoring this week who actually did that. He had his paper was in 16 point. And I was like, why did you do that? And he said, well, it had to be an 8-page paper. I was like, it's 16 point though. That's actually
he wants to accommodate the elderly and those who are
Well,
visually impaired.
Like me, I guess. You may think that the reason why this book is so much shorter than the previous books is because the original televised story is only 3 episodes long. That, in and of itself, is unusual, given
I'm sorry,
the fact...
this story was 3 episodes long?
3 episodes long.
Oh, my word.
Yeah, I know, and I know what you're thinking, because you're used to them being
I was thinking it kind of
four-parters.
zipped along, actually, for 1 episode. I had no
Really?
idea that it was
3 episodes, 3 25-minute episodes. And the 3-parters were not the norm until... 1989, 1988, the first McCoy season had the first one, so by that point they were doing them as a cost-cutting measure. They were trying to get the same amount of stories into a 13-episode season. Here, though, the reason why it's 3 parts is because originally it was 4. Yeah, this book has material that was deleted from the original version to bring the original 4-parter down to 3. Apparently the original story had a lot more Hilda and Bert in it. And the BBC had a serials decree that the 3rd and 4th episodes be edited and spliced together to create a fast-paced story. Not that that seems to have worked at all. This caused a problem later in the season when they had a single episode slot to fill, which they did with the Doctorless one-shot Mission to the Unknown, and it'll be a while before we get there, but needless to say, they didn't novelize one episode. They actually folded that into the 12-parter, The Daleks Master Plan, which we'll be doing in November. Anyway, this novelization adds back all of that material that was cut. So while this story seems paper thin to begin with, even minuscule, you might say. Yeah, thank you for that. I've been working on that all week. It might have been worse, and that's where Terrance Dicks comes in. We've talked about Dicks before, but this is your first introduction to Dicks, both of you. Would that were true. Terrance Dicks, that is, yes. Because Dalton, you did not read the first story novelization, and Alyson, you haven't. This is your first experience with Dicks. And boy, howdy. We have not talked about him in a lot of detail. Terrance Dicks was born in 1935, got his first big break in television after writing several radio plays because of his friend Malcolm Hulkey, who we will also get back to eventually because I love him as a writer. He's fantastic. He was working on the Avengers, the Steed and Peel one, not the one with, Captain America and the Hulk. In 1968, he started working as an assistant script editor on Doctor Who. By the following year, he was head editor. Dicks was head editor. Yeah, I know. They just keep coming, don't they?
The
Too many on the dance floor.
Yeah, the Dicks jokes just
Making
keep
a
coming.
portmanteau. Editor.
He has. Head editor. And he got his first on-screen credit co-writing the 10-part Patrick Troughton swan song, The War Games. And by 1974, he'd written his first book for the target range, The Auton Invasion, and would go on to write another 63 of them. He is the most prolific writer. The next prolific writer was Ian Marter, who did 10. Or 9, depending on if you count that one book against him. He's also the most polarizing author of the series, because while he does tend to add new material to his earlier books, or rework the original story to make it better on the page, he's also known for being a strictly script page writer, which makes his work very hit or miss with most fans. So yes. One more thing that's significant and kind of cool about this book and the next one we're doing this month, in our month of double dicking, is that Planet of the Giants is Dick's last Hartnell novelization, and his next to last Target book ever. He'll do Wheel in Space the following year, while Dalek Invasion of Earth, which we're looking at later this month, is his first Hartnell novelization in 1977. So we're kind of looking at the tail end and the beginning, but reversed. I know, the tail end of Dicks, whatever.
But we're getting the full Monty.
We're getting the full Monty, exactly. All the full range of Dicks that are possible.
Schrodinger's Dick. Yes.
Yes, let's have a moment to just kind of think about that for a moment, why don't we? By the way, listeners, I have to apologize. At the end of the last episode, Dalton Hughes here confused me because you were teasing me about my love for Daleks, and that caused me to say that the next episode was Dalek Invasion of Earth. It's not. So we got our fans really excited for this episode, and what they're getting instead is Planet of Giants, or as Alyson, you put it, Planet of Giant Dicks.
That's what the PDF abbreviated to on my phone.
Did it really?
I mean, I wouldn't be disappointed to find out that I was getting dicked, so...
Oh, you had to wait until I took a drink to say that, didn't you? Son of a bitch.
You have to take a drink every time he says it.
Yes, I do. Well,
You're going to need more beer.
I think I'm going to need more beer. Also, one other thing. If you look at the back of this, can you imagine paying $3.95 for this?
In 1990?
In 1990,
Oh,
$3.95 for this, when earlier books that were twice as long were $2.50.
Yeah.
Because they had just done another price hike that year. So that was the other thing. They had to get it over 100 pages, barely. Yeah. All right, let's read the blurb and find out what this month's
about?
What's it about? The Doctor is feeling confident. When is he never? This time the TARDIS has landed on Earth, in England, in 1963. But when he and his companions venture outside, they are soon lost in a maze of ravines and menaced by gigantic insects, and the insects are dying. Every living thing is dying. Well, that's so true. Meanwhile, in a cottage garden on a perfect summer's day, the man from the ministry arrives to put a stop to the production of DN6, a pesticide with the power to destroy all life forms. But the men who invented DN6 will stop at nothing. Nothing, I tell you. Not even murder. In their desire to see DN6 succeed. Can the 1-inch-tall doctor foil their plans? Well, obviously.
No, they all die.
They all die. They all die horribly. Alrighty. Tell you what, since Alyson is new to us, we will start with you, and I will ask the first general question I have. What are your first impressions of this book overall?
Well, whenever I watch a movie where there's some sort of mystery or plot twist and I figure out what it is, that's always a bad sign because I'm never trying to figure it out. Mm-hmm. So if it's obvious to me, it's really badly done. So on the back of the book, when they say, the doctor is 1 inch tall, I thought, well, now we know who the murderer is. I'd rather spoil the mystery of why there are so many large insects overall. And then the first sentence, in a sterling example of way to show not tell, was, it was a beautiful summer's day. So it was actually much better than I expected, because after reading the back of the book and the first sentence, I thought this was going to be a very long, hard slog.
Yeah.
And then I thought it was actually surprisingly entertaining and zipped along compared to what I was expecting based on that.
That's good to know. Oh, good, because it's neither long nor hard for a Dicks book.
No.
Sorry. That's just gonna... The hits keep coming, folks. Yeah. Dalton, what about you?
Yeah, I feel the same way. I feel like reading the blurb, it sounded like this was going to be another, like, Keys of Marinus or another adventure where it's like there's a lot of stuff happening. And this story sounds like it could take place in, like, 20 minutes.
Yeah.
Like, it's very truncated. It's very just like, this is what happened. Mm-hmm. And even though there's some jumping around between characters, secondary and main characters, the whole story really takes place just in the span of an afternoon, really. Right. Which I felt like some of that could go along with them being small, with them being shrunken down. It adds this, like, the world's big and time seems to take longer, but it doesn't really. But it's just...
the story makes it feel that way.
But it makes it feel that way. Even reading the back of this again, like, it makes it seem like there's so much more that's going to happen in the story. Mazes of ravines. And it's just like they're on a cobblestone path.
Yeah. Mazes of ravines.
But I thought that might go on and on and on.
Right.
It really didn't. They figure it out pretty quickly.
And it's like they're 1 inch tall. This path can't be that wide. If you go in either direction 2 or 3 minutes, you're going to find the side of the path. You're going to find grass or whatever's not the path.
The scale shifts a lot.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh, God, yeah. It's never consistent.
But yeah, I feel like this one, it could have been worse than it was. It still is not my favorite. It still is not something that is, like, super interesting to me. But it was a quick read. It was an easy read. It was an interesting read. But it was just ultimately just kind of, like, flat.
Okay. Yeah.
In ways. So.
And that was kind of my impression of it, too. But then that's always been my impression of the televised story. So it astonishes me that after an 8-week break, they decided to start season 2 with this.
Yeah, this doesn't seem like the right place to jump back into the series.
And it really isn't, because if I remember correctly, and I should have done this research before we started recording, but I seem to recall hearing from somebody that they recorded Planet of Giants and Dalek Invasion of Earth all in the same block as season 1, so that Caroline Ford, who was playing Susan, could leave.
Yeah.
And then they started the new recording block with The Rescue, which we'll be getting in a couple of in about a month.
Okay.
That makes a lot more sense, except even that's a weird place to start because it's a 2-parter, and the whole point of the story is just to introduce a new companion. Almost nothing happens in that.
But even that would kind of go along with having only seen newer seasons. A lot of times they do introduce new companions at the beginning of a new season.
Almost exclusively.
That would set up that trend. So yeah, having this be like the start of the second season is like, what?
Yeah, it's just a weird one. Well, that and seasons back then were 48 weeks long. Yeah, which is part of the reason why Hartnell ended up getting sick and having to leave, and Troughton was like, oh, I'm not doing more than 3 years of this.
Yeah.
They didn't end up with a more traditional 26-episode season until 1970.
48 episodes?
48 weeks.
Wow.
Yeah, per year. It was insane. It was a lot of Doctor Who.
But they were doing... The episodes were half an hour instead of the hour-long episodes that I'm used to.
Right.
Having seen all of the new series. So, I feel like... I mean... That could work.
It could. And it did. It's surprising that they were able to chug through the way they were. I mean, that's part of the reason why Keys of Marinus was so dire.
Yeah.
Because they're having to do that schedule every... I think they recorded on Saturday nights.
It's almost like a soap opera or something.
It really is. It really
it's not 5 days a week, but still. That's tremendous.
But that's how all television production was at the time. But if you were doing, a telefantasy series, that's insanity. Especially since if you watch this story on screen, the one thing that is impressive about it is the miniaturization effects. Everything that's giant is huge. That. Yeah, it's lovely. The fake fly, for instance, doesn't look fake. It's really quite well done.
Do they use models for it? Do they use camera effects to get some of the...
A little bit of both.
Okay.
At one point when, what's his name? And I can't remember the characters' names because they all kind of blend together. The one guy who was shot, the guy from the
was
Ministry.
Pharaoh and the other Fletcher.
And Fowler? Is that the other one?
Forrester?
Forrester.
Forrester is the murderer.
That's so it was
and
Forrester
I assume Trump's new head
Pharaoh.
of the EPA.
Yeah, because if Deanne Six were around now, we'd all be dead. Because Trump would be like, oh, I can't do Trump to save my life, but
That's a blessing.
Why would you want to?
Quite all right.
Exactly. But whoever gets shot, the way they see the body is as a photo blow up. It's actually the size of a wall in the studio.
Okay.
Which is kind of brilliant, but it's also kind of like, oh, they're looking at a photo blow up. Which is very 60s, but it works.
Yeah.
And, in fact, I could go on about miniaturization for ages because I honestly thought about giving a brief history of how miniaturization has kind of ebbed and flowed in televisual stuff.
Yeah.
Because you've both seen Incredible Shrinking Man from the 50s, right?
I have not.
No?
I've seen the
Really?
poster.
Oh my god, you're both so young.
Missed that one.
Oh, the movie is great. The novel is even better, but it's also incredibly misogynistic and homophobic.
You said it was from the 50s, right?
Oh yeah, so that's about part of
It's
the
a
point.
redundant statement.
Yeah, exactly. So you don't get much in the way of, miniaturization as a thing until the 60s, and then suddenly there's this in Britain. You've got Fantastic Voyage, which is a movie with Raquel Welch and other people that I don't remember. But it was novelized by Isaac Asimov, strangely enough. Yeah. And you also had a god-awful show by Irwin Allen called Land of the Giants that only lasted a season on ABC. It was in color. And people tend to look at this episode and that, and they say, they're made about the same time, but this one's so much better than that.
Okay.
It's about the only thing that's impressive. And then you don't get miniaturization until the 80s, and then you get It's Played for Laughs, like Inner Space.
I saw. Honey, I Shrunk the Kid.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's kind of a tapped-out trope, but not at the time that this was made. This would have been really exciting.
Yeah.
Not so exciting these days, though. Questions that you have after having finished the novel?
I was not familiar with Barbara Wright or Ian Chesterton or Susan Foreman. I'm reading the names now, so I remember them. But I thought that the half-page origin story actually worked pretty well for this story. And Susan's like with the fifth Beatle of the Boxcar Children. It seems like the story really followed her in the yard and followed her into the box. It was enough for me to, I think, grasp the characters pretty quickly and easily.
So if you're coming to this new...
Yeah, I'd not heard of any of these before, and it was enough of an introduction without belaboring it.
Right. In fact, you and I watched the Doctor Who and the Daleks movie together. No, we didn't. We watched Dalek Invasion Earth 2150 AD, the second one, the Peter Cushing one. So you've seen Susan, but you've seen the disgusting Disneyfied version of Susan as a 7-year-old girl. Yeah, believe it or not.
They made her into a 7-year-old girl.
Yes, they did. In fact, I'm probably wrong about the age, but yeah, she's a little girl.
They made her young, though.
They made her young.
As opposed to...
But they also made the main character Doctor Who, that is his name, and Barbara and
Is he
Susan.
an actual owl in that?
Yes. And Barbara and Susan
Perches
are
on the
both his...
7-year-old shoulder and says, "Woo," over and over.
Might as well have done for all that it has to do with the story. And Barbara and Susan are both his granddaughters.
Both of them. Okay.
Yes, and Ian is Barbara's boyfriend. Which he kind of is, if you think about it.
I mean, he is, but he isn't, but he is.
Yeah.
We talked about this last time, I think. Their relationship being very...
fluid.
amorphous and kind of just open. So
Exactly.
Yeah.
But good. So Dicks has done a good job of
Yes,
introducing
yes.
the character.
Yeah.
Well, and I thought from the introduction of Barbara, it was going to be more of a Lucy and Susan problem, where the younger girl is interesting and adventurous, and an adult woman is just a shrew who kills everyone's fun. But then I was actually pleased that the Doctor is really bitchy and mean to Barbara and to Ian both, and he seems to have so much contempt for both of them that seemed quite equal opportunity.
He's an equal opportunity asshole, the first
He seems to
Doctor.
hate them all.
He really does.
He does. He really
Susan
does.
not so much, but even every once in a while she'll get the back end of it too.
Yeah.
Well, I like that both Ian and Barbara at one point are thinking about, he's so confident, he's so often wrong, but what can you do? He's going to do what he wants to do anyway. Why even say anything?
Yeah.
That was
but
a nice
that's that
touch.
point.
They're getting used to that at this point.
They are. It's like your favorite line from what was it? Was it Reign of Terror, or was it the one Sensorites, in which they ask him about the outer atmosphere and the environment, and he says, and she says, so we've landed in the unknown again.
I think it was in Reign of Terror, yeah. Whenever they land in France, and they're discussing the readings on his sensors, and he's just like, oh, it's fine. And she's like, but do you know? It doesn't matter, because he's going to do whatever he's going to do anyway. So
Is this Doctor just a misanthrope? I haven't seen episodes. Okay.
Oh, God, yeah.
I assumed.
Yeah, because the movie version that you've seen, played by Peter Cushing, is a lot more likable. Hartnell can be likable. He can be very sweet. But he's generally referred to as irascible. In fact, I think that's Dick's stock phrase for him, that he's irascible. I know that's how I learned the word. It was from a Dick's novelization when I was a kid. But
I do like how cheerfully macabre he is when other people try to be optimistic. I think what I wrote down is, someone suggests that the worm, quote, died naturally, end quote, and he retorts, no, it died, quote, suddenly and violently, end quote, from murder which has its own posture and appearance.
yes, he's quite gruesome at times.
Yes.
But he is astute in his observations, because even...
Turns out to be true.
He could tell just from the way the earthworm was that something...
Not it was poison, it was murder.
It was murder.
An interpersonal conflict.
Of course.
It's not like the later doctors who, like the Peter Capaldi doctor now, who could probably say, oh yeah, he was murdered. I've murdered so many people in my time that I know what it looks like.
Right.
Well, I'm sorry,
From
does the
personal
Doctor say
experience.
things like that now?
Well, kinda. I mean, he does admit to the fact that he's killed people. Lots of them.
In later iterations, he can look back and see where he's done things wrong. But
does he say it casually, like there might still be some buried in his backyard or in the trunk of his car?
Oh yeah,
depends on the doctor.
All right.
Yeah,
I've only seen a few episodes of Capaldi.
The David Tennant doctor would probably be more like, oh yeah, they're buried in the back.
It's nothing.
It's nothing.
Like you do.
Break a few eggs.
Maybe have a line about "Thank you for reminding me that I have to go handle that."
Yes, exactly.
Shovel full of lime.
And in fact, it's going to be Terrance Dicks in the next book that manages to bring to life on page Hartnell's line about "I never take lives except when my own is in jeopardy." That changes, obviously.
Yeah,
that will change greatly, but we're not talking about those doctors.
But did that happen in the 60s episodes already? I think of that as a kinder, gentler time with heavier network control over stories and what's appropriate for all ages programming.
It will happen occasionally, but it won't be the doctor doing it intentionally, as far as I remember.
I was going to say a lot of that, too, is just, this is a younger doctor. This is a first iteration of the doctor. This is the doctor as a younger version of himself, even though his appearance is an old man. But
yeah, he's a mere stripling of 400 years by this point. Yeah, exactly. So you would say that Barbara definitely leads a lot more as a character.
Well, I expected the character to be just unbearable. And so she was more bearable than I expected. And I thought that Susan would be developed a lot more than she was. And she was almost a non-entity. Which
yeah. She's almost always a non-entity.
Yes.
Like I said, I'm thinking it's not just C.S. Lewis who does this. You see this even like in Game of Thrones, where the little girl or the younger girl is allowed to be really interesting, and then puberty happens, and to the male author, she is suddenly a terrifying or completely boring creature. I thought we'd see more of that.
Yeah, that's true.
But Susan was completely bland, I thought, in this.
And it's weird, because this is her next to last story. She does get a lot more screen time and a lot more page time in the next book. But even then, the way she leaves, it just kind of happens.
How old is she supposed to be?
Well, that's been an object of debate.
They always say school in the novelization.
Yeah, she's supposedly 15. She looks 15. The actress who played her, I think, was about 23 at the time and already had a child by that point. And later fan fiction puts her at anywhere from 15 to 150. Because Gallifreyan, she could be, Well, I don't know about that.
Is she actually the Doctor's granddaughter?
That's another point of debate. Okay. I tend to think yes. The new series seems to point in that direction. Later episodes of the old series tended not to. But, yeah, it's hard to say. But definitely, you notice that Dicks actually puts the word granddaughter in quotes.
Yeah.
When he introduces her.
Yeah. I noticed that.
He seems to be, by 1990 anyway, of the school that doesn't believe that she is his granddaughter.
I feel like even if she isn't his actual blood relation granddaughter, she's at least someone that he has an affinity for, someone that he feels a need to have around, protect, get through things. So, like...
But is she definitely a Time Lord?
That's another point of contention.
She's definitely Gallifreyan. She may not be a Time Lord.
Because as we've said before, all Time Lords are Gallifreyan, but not all Gallifreyans are Time Lords.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
So
that's all right. Now you know. And
no one's half the battle.
I've been wanting to do that for so long. He always describes Babs, though, in the harshest way, which is probably why you got that impression that she'd be shrill.
But it was just at the beginning in this book, it seemed like.
Yeah, because one of the things that I cannot stand about Terrance Dicks is the fact that in the novelization of the very first book, he actually says something about Barbara along the lines of, she'd be a lot prettier if she smiled more often.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we've heard that before.
Does he actually hoot "smile, baby" at her from the sidewalk?
Yes, exactly.
Well, he does say in the first mention something about her having a permanent facial expression of disapproval.
Yes.
And then he talks about Ian being the fun teacher, and that's why my expectations were so lowered that the rest of the book was better than I expected.
Yeah, and that's the weird thing. If you look at stills of Jacqueline Hill, who played Barbara, she's a gorgeous woman, but she also has what you might call resting bitch face. That if she's not smiling, it's kind of there's a very permanent frown.
I resemble that remark.
No, you don't. No, you don't. But she was playing a character a lot younger than she was, so I guess that's where it comes from. But Barbara, as you and I both know, is an incredibly formidable woman.
Oh, she's so much stronger than they even really let on.
Yeah.
In any of the descriptions, you really have to just see her in action, see what she's gone through to get where she's at. She in most of the other stories, she's been one of the more she's a lot of the problem solving. Yeah. She's one of the more like aware characters. A lot of times when things are going on, she's more in tune with it before anyone else is.
Yeah.
Whereas I expected her to say, "You should not climb those high objects. You should eat more oat bran. You should take a nap." That did not happen, which was good.
And we would love someone to say that to Susan at some point, yes.
Eat more bran.
Eat more bran.
Or to the doctor.
That would be to the doctor, yes.
Pull your skirt down, we can see, since you're up on that high ledge, yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, you could see Barbara being the one who gave out demerits.
Yeah.
Yeah, she would be the one.
She would be a tough teacher, but I feel like this like new adventure that she's been forced into. She's not a teacher anymore. Mm-hmm. She is this companion to the Doctor flying around time and space. So given where she's been and where she's going, yeah, she's kind of had to reassess things too.
Exactly. In fact, it's Ian's training as a science teacher that comes more to the fore in this story. Because this is obviously the sciencey one. Usually what they would do, since there was still an educational remit to the series by this point, they would have the science fiction story that would teach you something about science, and then they'd give you the historical, which teaches you history. Which is why he's the science teacher, she's the history teacher.
So is this about the same ration of education that we would have from Duke on G.I. Joe before he says, now you know, and knowing's half the battle at the end of its 30 seconds?
Kinda, yeah. It's not that kind of end of the episode snippet. It'd be interspersed through, and I think that's why the most interesting thing about this story, I think, but we'll get back to discussing Barbara and Ian here in a second, but we do have to discuss this, is the fact that Silent Spring by Rachel Carson came out in 1962. So that would have been very much in everybody's minds by that point, even 2 years after the book's publication.
Yeah.
We were just then starting to realize, oh my God, pesticides are going to destroy the environment. They're going to destroy the ecosystem, and they may end up destroying the planet. So this is very much of the time.
Isn't this topical in 2017, talking about humans destroying the planet?
Yeah, just a little bit. There is
But then
that.
they
Still
didn't realize they were
haven't
doing it.
Right.
Now
Whereas
we know full well.
for sure we are, and how much money is to be made by doing it. Yeah, we all went silent there for a moment because we're like, oh my God. Yeah.
I've noticed that a lot with the books we've been reading, though. They've all really had a lot of modern implications, and it's just like, okay.
They all still have some relevance.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is quite nice in its own way, but kind of terrifying.
Terribly
in another
depressing
way.
in another way.
Yeah.
We should be past this by now.
Yeah, something
We
that they
should
were
have learned
discussing
better.
in 1964 is still an issue.
I've got to say, it's a pretty shaky business plan, though, if this literally kills a cat on contact. How long does he think he's going to be able to distribute, does Forrester think he's going to be able to distribute the product before someone figures it out?
Exactly. I mean, it's even affecting that cat there on the bed.
Oh.
Frisky was. We were recording this in my apartment for once, and one of our cats is up on the bed, which is nearby, and Frisky is sneezing. Poor thing.
Cat I will only refer to as the amazing floofball.
He really is. Luckily, he has not gotten into any DN6. At least I hope not, because he was sneezing a moment ago. But yeah, the business plan, the plan for this is just insane. It does seem very Trumpian. It's kind of like, oh yeah, let's just kill the guy from the ministry, we'll get rid of the body, and no one will ever know.
Yeah, we'll fire the head of the FBI, and no one will ever know.
I thought that made more sense than once he realizes how quickly it kills, he's undeterred. I thought that was a little over the top. But listen, this is where I hit my limit. Well, that was a little too far.
Right.
The time machine and the miniaturization, that was fine. But this business plan really will not hold up, sir, and we are not giving you the loan.
Yeah.
And yet somehow, yeah, they think it's going to be perfectly fine. Yeah, the secondary characters in this book are just bizarre, which is why I prefer to talk about Barbara and Ian a little bit longer before we get into them.
Yeah.
Because Barbara is, well, what do you think? Because we usually love Barbara and how she's a prime mover of the plot, but here, other things are happening to her.
It's just kind of, I don't know if it's Barbara or if it's the story. Given the framework of what's going on, if she's just like, I can't really do anything. I don't really have time to shine, you know?
Yeah.
This really isn't like any situation where she... It's okay. I'll pause.
Sorry.
No, it's okay. Yeah, there's really not like a chance for her to like pull out any knowledge or protect Susan from anything or fight with the doctor and be snarky and silly. Like,
True.
There really, throughout the whole story, there really isn't a point where like Susan can shine where she has in other books that we've read. Like, this one really, there wasn't a whole lot for her to do, really. And even the doctor, like, in the end, like, they're just trying to get back to the ship. Eventually, he's even just like, I don't know there's really even anything we can do.
Well, he does have an insane plan to blow up the lab.
Well, there is that.
by switching on the gas and standing in front of a flame and saying, "Don't worry, it'll only melt the can, which will explode
Right.
like a 1,000-ton bomb while we stand 3 feet away. It will be fine." So it was an action. It's not a smart one.
Yeah. So a typical doctor plan, in other words.
Yeah, but even that was motivated by getting them back to the ship. It's how can we get out of this house and get back to the TARDIS and just get inside, close the doors, and act like this didn't happen. Which is what it seems like.
So many fans want to do with this story, too.
Well, I mean, you're an inch tall, and there's this crazy pesticide that's going to kill everything on the planet, and there's a cat that tried to eat you, and
then died.
Yeah.
And then died.
So, yeah, I feel like the story itself is just kind of hindering Barbara from being able to be more complex and be the Barbara that we have seen before.
Yeah.
There's just really not anything much to work with.
Exactly. And I noticed earlier you misspoke a bit and you said Susan, and that's even more true of her.
Yeah.
Because she's reduced to a cipher in this story.
Yeah. They're pretty much... Susan a lot of times doesn't have a lot to do anyway. There have been points where she has had a lot to do, or that she's at least been an integral part of the story. But this one... No. You could almost not even mention that Susan was there. Yeah,
in fact, I keep forgetting that she was.
Yeah. Well, and the two of you are visualizing the cast, and I'm not, so I don't know their usual presence, and none of them really stood out to me. Ian stands out as the most manic and energetic, but also quite flat, so he stands out as one who acts the most. But actually, Forrester is the most interesting person in the story.
Really?
I thought as the murderer, the most personable, because he's so entertainingly maniacally evil.
Yeah.
And then I like that there's a moderately evil scientist. He's willing to go along with covering up the murder and maybe some death.
Yeah.
Because he's
some death.
Well, because he's ameliorating the world hunger situation.
Right.
But there are certain lines he won't cross. They actually were more engaging characters in this than the heroes. Wow. For someone who is not familiar with any of the actors.
Now that's interesting. That's really interesting.
And they have almost equal time in the book.
Well, they kind of have to. Because there's not much for anybody to do in this book. And actually the murder part is a more interesting thing. Odd, given that it's called Planet of Giants, and you've got these 1-inch tall characters trying desperately to make their way through this maze of gigantic creatures. There should have been more of that.
Yeah.
There was a fly.
There was a fly, and there was an earthworm, and there was a cat.
And that's it.
There was mention of birds, but no actual
matchbox,
birds.
no briefcase,
and
the drain pipe.
There is that.
There's object manipulation with the corks.
And, well, that's the sort of thing they can pull off with sets. And I think that's why.
Yeah.
Whereas the other stuff has to be done. I mean, the cat, for instance, is basically stock footage of a cat blown up.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's...
a terribly violent image. This exploded cat.
Yeah, exactly. Whereas at least Incredible Shrinking Man had going for it the fact that they were able to do... He fights a spider at one point, and that's terrifying, because spiders are terrifying anyway.
Yeah.
But if you're an inch tall and you've got a spider, it's like, holy shit.
Yeah.
But here they can't really do that, and that's understandable, and it kind of shifts the focus away from the giantism to the environmental part, which I think was kind of the point.
Yeah.
Yeah. It is really just a bizarre story in so many ways.
It's also hard now to read it as fresh, because I didn't realize that this came out a couple years after Silent Spring, and then I remember 1990 as sort of the zenith of Earth Day celebrations as well, and sort of this rediscovery of environmentalism in a way that's sort of was a cultural norm until pretty recently.
Yeah.
It seems like a really tired, flat, obvious environmental story in some ways, but I have to think about in context, it was much fresher at the time.
Except if, with Dicks writing it, I think if another writer in the series had done it, the environmentalism might have come out a bit more. There would have been more focus on it. But I think Dicks dropped the ball when it came to doing that, because I'm not sure that was really an interest of his with the story. I think he was just saying, okay, I've got 3 episodes of script. Wait, no, I have 4 episodes of script. I'm going to put in all of that extra material that was taken out, which means we get more of Hilda and Bert. Christ almighty.
I really like the idea of a village where there's one building.
Yes.
Well, it's like the store, and then the phone office is in the back of the store.
Yeah.
But the cop works out of the phone office.
Yeah, and they're married.
Yes.
Yeah, the constable is
Yes. They say that the multi-purpose building is a new architectural innovation, but apparently
certainly is not.
they were way ahead of the times.
Yeah.
Yes.
And the weird thing is that really dates the story to some degree, because it is such a, back cottage, English cottage, back garden type of murder mystery. And that's been compared to that.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say, even the fact that there's still, like, the operator. They have to call to connect the call.
Yeah.
It just shows how this is supposed to be, this is the countryside. This is the middle of nowhere.
But they talk about that, like an antiquated phone system and that sort of thing, in a way that it didn't seem awkward and weird. It seemed like, here's a story that's set 30 years ago.
Well, it's kind of weird because I worked as an answering service operator in grad school in Baton Rouge in 93, 94, and we were still doing things like trunk lines and such, but not the switching of the things. Yeah, they had just switched away from that, in fact. But that's the Deep South in America, so of course they're going to use antiquated technology. Yeah. Sorry, I think we just lost maybe 2 of our listeners when I said that. But,
the other one fell
asleep. But I'm from the South.
Yes,
so.
But not the Deep South, though. We accept you. We accept you with a
One of us.
One of us.
I'm from the last state. I'm from the last state that seceded. So
this is true. There you go. So we still, we can hang.
North Carolina doesn't count. That's the word North in its name.
Yes,
Where are you from?
exactly.
I should know.
Right outside of Charlotte, North Carolina.
Oh, I thought that's where I was born. I lived in Denver, North Carolina, until I was 5, on the
Familiar
lake.
with Denver?
Oh.
Yeah. I went to school at Western Carolina. So.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Well, after that digression, we'll catch up later.
We'll talk later.
That's fine. I might even leave that in. Talking about the old-fashioned, old village, tiny town
Yeah,
feel
so,
to this.
I thought that was supposed to be kind of slapstick. Like, I thought it was supposed to be absurd and quaint, that the cop, the store, and the operator is one building and 2 people for these 3 different entities. I thought it was supposed to be over-the-top cute. But...
And yet it's played absolutely serious in the televised version.
Really?
Yeah, I
I
mean,
visualized like a honeymooners kind of thing.
well, they're kind of cute in their own way, but they're not meant for comic effect, because they're the ones that kind of crack the mystery. They're like, wait a minute, that's the same man that I heard before.
I read that all wrong as the over-the-top busybody who's, I'm going to turn on a loud sound to wake them up.
Now, I think that's...
Boy, are they annoyed. That's the wrong guy. I know everyone's voice.
Yes.
I thought it was supposed to be more of a...
I think that's Terrance Dicks.
Okay.
I think that's putting his stamp on it, because I did notice in my notes that Hilda really is the Mrs. Kravitz of Doctor Who. Always looking out the window and go, Abner, can you see what she's doing today? It's like, it's kind of got that feel to it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's strange. I'm sure with another writer we would have gotten more of the environmentalism and less of the, playing up the comical notion of Hilda and Bert, who are very paper-thin characters, but still, it's kind of strange. What else? What else strikes you in this book? Because I've got plenty of stuff.
Doctor has a Ken Ham Answers in Genesis moment, where he says there's a kind of pattern to it all. I actually was impressed enough I wrote this down. And a pattern suggests a brain at work, a brain with some kind of purpose.
Oh.
But he did not make it all the way to 6-day young Earth creation. I thought maybe that's where he was headed, but he dropped that thread.
Yeah, I'm kind of glad he didn't. Doctor Who tends to ignore religion, which is a blessing.
Well, but also cultural context. That would not have had that sort of significance in 1963. Although 1990, you had that as a cultural force.
Yeah, you would have had the first faint glimmerings of creationism rearing its ugly head.
So is most of the dialogue word for word from the script?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, Dicks does make changes when necessary. Every once in a while, there'll be a line of dialogue that'll just be ridiculous in context, and he'll change that. He didn't do it with this one. Or rather, I didn't notice it because I didn't pay that much attention when I was watching the story again. I was like, playing games on my phone while it was playing in the background. Yeah, what story did I do that with last time? Oh, it was Reign of Terror. Yeah, the last one. Yeah. But the book was so much better in that case.
Yeah.
Whereas here, it's basically straightforward. Every once in a while, when we got the new material, what there was of it, I'd say, oh, I don't remember that. I'll have to go back and check that. Turns out I don't have to, which I'm very happy about.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's not there. But yeah, it's almost line for line. Speaking of lines, did you have a favorite line or a least favorite line? You obviously talked about the
worm murder.
The worm murder, yes.
Worm murder, that was
Suddenly and violently. Yes.
The attitude of death, the posture of death.
Yeah.
And that line about, creationism, or rather, intelligent design.
Well, I actually thought it was leading into some later observation, and it did not.
No.
Just talking about the landscape architect.
I think just echoing back the conversation about that Barbara had in Reign of Terror with the Doctor, there's kind of that ongoing thing of Barbara and Ian questioning the Doctor, which continues in this one where they're just like, how do you know what happened? How do you know we're in the right place? How do you know we're in the right time? How do you know that, they just question him, and eventually they just kind of just like give up. They're just like, he's gonna answer us with something no matter what we ask him. So
right.
Us questioning him in the end doesn't really get us anywhere.
The whole mutual exasperation society at the beginning that everyone participates in, other than maybe Susan, who seems to be floating on a cloud.
She's used to it.
I was gonna say, she's used to it by this point. She's just like, guys, like, how many adventures have you been on so far? How many...
You always like it.
Right. Everything ends up fine. Even though
she almost died in the last story.
And almost all of them.
Would we have noticed?
No.
Not in this one.
We really wouldn't. That's the same. Here's the interesting thing, though. They actually are in the right place, in the right time.
Yeah.
They are in England. They are in 1960... Well, whatever year they're in at this point, 63. It's actually 64. So he's gotten them to the right place and time. It's just this bizarre accident has happened. Let me ask you the question. What did you get the impression was the cause of this miniaturization?
Well, they explain it as when they were materializing, something about the pressure being too much for them. So the TARDIS itself, like, miniaturizing itself to fight the pressure, which sounds like an effect of pressure. Mm-hmm.
It was actually pretty good technobabble at the beginning.
Really?
Oh yeah.
I mean, I question the scientific education value of that explanation for an all-ages programming. I didn't, but it actually had a nice veneer of viability, I thought, at the beginning. And then at the end with the seed, it was just so unbelievably stupid that it wasn't even entertaining. But at the beginning, when they talked about the pressure and that affecting things, and Earth's atmosphere has this sort of pressure per square inch. Others are much more dense or much more diffuse. That satisfied the need for a veneer of scientific respectability.
Now you mentioned the seed. What were you saying?
And then at the end, the Doctor says, if we're regular size, the amount of poison that Barbara had will be 1/70th.
Yeah.
And then they take a seed with them, and then they figure out that they're back to regular size by seeing the seed shrink. And I guess I did not think they even bothered to try to give an explanation as to why things in the TARDIS would change. Things in the TARDIS would change back to their original scale, but other things that they brought with them would not also change. Why does not everything within the environment change?
Why is the seed changing? In fact, I
thought they should have, put out something that kind of sounded slick, but they didn't even try.
Yeah,
They did not even try. But Dicks did not even try.
Dicks did not even try.
There was not enough dicks on this dance floor. I'm so sorry.
That's fine. You're entering into the spirit of the thing.
I couldn't not.
That's perfectly fine. Well, I was about to propose an explanation for that, but then I realized, it doesn't make any sense. Because I was going to say, if it's not from within the TARDIS, if it's not native to the TARDIS, then it's not going to... Except why would that even work? Because Ian and Barbara are not necessarily native to the TARDIS. I mean, you could probably trot out some later technobabble as Artron energy, but no.
It's like, when I know who the murderer is right away, it's painfully obvious because I'm never trying to figure it out. So, no, It's a little silly to say, all right, I was down with everything until the scene, that I could not take. I know it's extremely silly, but when it's that noticeably eye-rolling that takes you out of the story, it's really bad that they didn't try to toss out a perfunctory explanation.
Yeah, I'm going back and trying
Whereas the earlier fake perfunctory explanation worked very nicely.
Yeah, I'm just looking back through here to see if there was anything, and yeah, there's nothing. It's literally just says Ian puts it on the table and just watches it shrink.
Yeah, which is what happens on screen.
Yeah.
It's the one special effects shot that's really kind of like, oh, they did this in 1963. That's 64. So that's impressive. But yeah, obviously there's an unformed joke in my head about Dicks and Seed, but I'll just let that pass, shall I? Probably just as well. Yeah. It's just, when I think about that explanation, it's even in my notes, the explanation of why they're so small is actually silly if you think about it, because the TARDIS does get tiny in the new series for an entirely different reason. But given how the inner dimensions are differ from the outer ones, something to do with that would have been more sensible.
Yeah.
But no, it's the Capaldi story with the boneless. The TARDIS shrinks and the Doctor's trapped inside it. And he can't get out. He can't get out of the TARDIS because he's small. Which is, oh wait, no, that's not true. The outer shell gets small, but the inner dimensions are still large.
Which is why he can't open it.
Yeah, and which is why he's able to do the thing from Addams Family routine to walk the TARDIS away from the railroad, which is just hilarious. Yeah. So much better than anything that happens in this one. As far as... I did have one line that I thought was hilarious, which was in Chapter 4. I don't think I'm making myself very clear, he said, which meant in Whitehall terms, you're being very stupid. Yes. That's pretty brilliant. When Dicks does that sort of thing, he's really quite good. He just doesn't have a lot to do with this particular one. Oh, and there was another one in Chapter 9. It was a terrible end, he thought, for someone who had once roamed through space and time, flushed down a sink like some unlucky bug.
Yes. What an end to have after everything that he would have done to die.
Yes, what a glorious end for the Doctor. And it's like, this is just the first Doctor. He doesn't even know yet.
Right. Flush down the toilet.
Is it just me, or is Ian carrying around the idiot ball something hard in this story?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, Ian in the story is not Ian.
No.
Is he not usually kind of a buffoon like that, or over-enthusiastic?
It depends.
He's a little bit of the musclehead, but like he also is a science teacher, so he's smart about things. He's curious. He helps the Doctor figure shit out a lot of times. Mm-hmm. But this time it's just like, yeah.
Well, he still gets the science, but he doesn't notice that Barbara's like, oh, stop, please, stop talking about this, and he doesn't connect it.
Yeah.
And it's even worse on screen, but here you're thinking, why doesn't he notice that she's reacting this way?
Right.
She's upset about something, and this is Barbara, mind you. Barbara doesn't overreact often.
No.
She will sometimes scream, yes, but she's not a screamer.
But she always reacts to things. She always is the character that will react to a stimulus. So
yes,
Susan's being slow and groggy, or Barbara, excuse me, is being slow and groggy and not acting herself, and she touched this seed.
Mm-hmm. That had to have been something.
Totally missed that.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Which is just odd for him.
Yeah.
Foot and mouth circulars. I just happened upon that.
Yes,
my eyes went straight to that. It's like, oh, yeah, 1963 in the country in England. Yeah. That makes absolute sense. But that thing about the tone, sending the tone through the phone.
Yeah.
At the times that Dicks wrote this, it's not clear that his readers would have even known what that was, but it's positively antediluvian now.
But I thought it was explained well enough.
Yeah.
You got the idea.
Kind of is, but even the fact that phone technology had changed even that much by 1990 is kind of interesting.
I read somewhere recently that Judy Blume updates her own books, and the main thing she updates is the technology, so that Super Fudge now has Super Fudge asking for like an iPad and CD or CDs or something. Well, CDs would already be antiquated. I thought that was interesting.
Oh yeah, the new dub of Sailor Moon does that. Because it was produced in the 90s, and now they make references to cell phones and texting and such. Yeah. And it actually works. I mean, if you're trying to sell a show about teenagers, you definitely have to do that.
It makes more sense for young adult literature, because I recently was reading an acquaintance's rant about some book of 50 must-reads for children that came out in the 50s or 60s, and she was saying, look at what high expectations we used to have of what children could read. I'm thinking, well, so you're talking about books that at that point were 50 years old.
Right.
Well, a modern kid has to do over 100 years of mental cultural mediation of different technology, different terminology. It's not just the reading level, it's trying to understand what in the world is being described. So it's actually much harder for a modern 10-year-old to read, a book from 1890 than it was in the 50s. It was much harder in the 50s than it was in 1910.
That's a point.
But this isn't that kind of story. The story talks about a quaint cottage and, gives us a sort of the comedic village of one married couple and everything. And I thought it worked for that.
Which is why...
I thought part of the point was that it was laughably out-of-date technology.
Yeah, which is why dropping the ball on the environmentalism part of it kind of bothers me a bit. Because the horror of that would have been a much more immediate for the viewing audience than it is for the reading audience in 1990. It should have been more, because as you said, that's the start of, some modern environmentalism, Earth Day, and what have you. It doesn't come across in the story. It doesn't come across in the book, I should say. Yeah, so it does seem kind of odd that he would just drop the ball on that. I do find it difficult to believe that a chemical could be more deadly than radiation, because at one point that is said. It's like, oh, come on. No. Even Rachel Carson wouldn't have said something quite that hyperbolic.
I mean, it did kill that cat pretty quickly, though, so...
Did. Yeah, I suppose so.
I think he wouldn't have been happy unless Bert was laying on his back on the floor, twitching with his limbs curled up like the dead ant.
Oh, absolutely.
I think that's what you wanted, was the death of Bert.
Oh, not just Bert, but Hilda, too. Yeah, I just want them all gone.
You wanted to make sure
Oh, yeah.
they didn't have a continuing bloodline after this?
No, I didn't want a Bert and Hilda spin-off. Yeah. Maybe the head of serials at the BBC was like, oh, we don't want a spin-off here. Let's get rid of these characters before people start becoming fans of them. Oh, Lord, that would just be terrible. Why did I have that? A hated voice called Smithers. I can't do the Mr. Burns voice. But that's what I was trying to do there. Sorry. All right. Just going over my notes real quick because we may have exhausted our discussion of this book already.
It was very large print.
It was. Oh my God. And oh yeah, and the end of it. The only noteworthy thing about the end of this book is that the last time we read a Dicks novel, actually you didn't, but when Danny and Sheena and I did Unearthly Child, it also segued rather ham-fistedly into a Dalek story.
The ending of this was very not handled well. like I've read the vast majority of the books we've done for the podcast so far, and this one just just like steamrolls right into it, just like crashes. Like, what in the world? What in the world?
Well, I guess the reason why he's doing that is because he already knows what the next book's going to be because he wrote it.
Yeah.
He wrote it years previously, but yeah, outside in the ruins of London, the Daleks were waiting. It's like, I want to be in that book. I don't want to be in this one anymore.
Yeah.
It's like, good God.
Well, but he effectively marketed the next book to you.
There is that.
The next book that had already come out.
Which he wrote.
He once again set the bar low.
Yes, which he'll get some of the money from. Well, maybe. I don't know. I think they were actually paid a lump sum.
Because even with... what was before Marco Polo? Edge of Destruction?
Yes.
Even with Edge of Destruction, they segue into Marco Polo, but it's not as just like blunt. It's not just like, here's the story, here's what's happening.
Oh,
because Marco Polo, they just kind of he just gives you like this image of things to come, not just like the Daleks are there and they're going to destroy everything.
Exactly. At the end of Edge of Destruction, they're somewhere, and it's cold. Yeah, and that's it. Whereas at the beginning of Marco Polo, you get a completely different opening scene.
Totally.
Yeah. And
Totally.
the two actually are meant to be right on top of each other, unlike this.
Yeah.
Yeah, the last scene in the televised version is not the first scene of Dalek Invasion of Earth.
Yeah.
It's just really... Oh, you want to hear bluntness? In the next book, and I'll point this out to you, there actually is one of those moments where it says... there's an asterisk in the print, and at the bottom it says, "See Doctor Who and the Daleks." And it refers back to the previous novel, and it's almost as if they're like, available in stores near you right now.
Oh.
Yeah, like comic books.
I was going to say,
like comic books
did
used
that.
to do.
Was it in the 70s they started doing that, or did they do it in the 60s?
They did do it in the 60s. In fact, Stan Lee was writing most of those, so they were delightfully cheesy. It's like, if you missed that story, true believers, go go read Avengers #3 right now. It's like, of course, that's fine, but to get it in print is kind of weird.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's basically what he's doing. We haven't talked about the cover, because it's, again, one of the ones with the shit logo, as I call it.
Ooh, that is bad.
It is. Because we've talked about the fact that that comes from the first computer-generated Doctor Who opening sequence. That's why there's that hard edge between the logo and the artwork.
Speaking of comics, this looks like that really sketchy computer-generated Iron Man comic from around, would that be 92 or 93?
Was
that
that
supposed to be...
Extremis? Was that the name of it?
No, that's from only about 10 years ago.
Oh,
this was something that...
Oh, yeah, the one that they did like on a Commodore or something.
Even been Frank Miller involved in some way. But it was supposed to be cutting-edge computer-generated. I couldn't look at more than 3 pages of it. It was so odious to the modern eye.
And it was the same time they did one for Batman, too. It was something similar to that. Yeah. But yeah, that cover is just...
just because we can.
Yeah.
Effects.
Right.
I mean, if it had been the other logo, I think that would have been a perfectly fine cover image, because you do have the giant fly coming up behind Hartnell going, "Hi there."
It's been enough time that if nostalgia for the style or affection for it as Kish would ever develop, it would have developed by now. It's never going to happen. That's just an offense to the cornea.
Yeah, I tend to agree.
Well, and the fly appears in that one scene.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
so you'd like to see more character development for the fly, is what you're saying. And maybe a spin-off wherein he devours the village of 2 people.
Right, exactly.
Well, I'm just thinking of, like, Reign of Terror
Feeds them to his larvae.
It had the doctor on it. It had the guillotine on it. It had 2 French soldiers on it. It had the Bastille, or at least, like, the Parisian skyline in the back. Like, there were other parts of the story that could have...
It's marketing. I definitely got the impression from the book that the previous book was much more interesting than the next book would be as well.
Yes, true. Yeah, that's what it comes down to. But you're right, there should be a giant cat on the cover.
There should be a cat, or there should be, a bottle of chemicals, or
dead fly.
Dead fly, something else. I mean, really... I get it, yes, the Doctor with the fly, it shows you the scale, Planet of the Giants, it's okay, I get it.
Yeah.
But it doesn't really...
Well,
do anything.
Bearing in mind that this book was probably produced just because it's 1990, the show has actually been off the air by this point.
Yeah.
And they don't know whether it's coming back, so they're just trying to eke out a release schedule. In fact, most of the last season was released in novelization form after this book. So they're trying to fill in the blanks. This is the last Hartnell one, obviously. Then they'll get to the last Troughton one. Then they run out of material because they run out of material.
Yeah.
So yeah, that makes some sense. But yeah, it's just... Yeah. Well, as we always do, let's go to Goodreads.com for online reviews of this book written by other readers, then follow up with our own ratings. By the way, if you're listening to this podcast and you want to have your review featured when we get to an upcoming book, which no one has taken me up on yet, really? I mean, honestly, this is our 9th episode. Come on, guys.
Do it, guys. Do it.
Yeah, simply read the book, which I admit is a bit of a hurdle, but do it, especially in this case. Write a review on Goodreads, and then write a comment on our Facebook page or on our subreddit, which is still pristine as the driven snow, so that we have a chance to see it before discussing the book ourselves. You may just get your review read out loud here, as I'm about to do. The average rating for this book out of 5 stars on Goodreads is 3.23. Which strikes me as kind of weirdly high.
That's really high.
Yeah, so I've taken quite a sampling here.
So I have never used Goodreads. Does it tend to grade on the curb relative to the genre the book is in?
No, strangely enough.
So this is like compared to Ulysses.
Mm-hmm.
This
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, it's one of those situations. So, yeah, they don't do that. It's 5 stars across the platform.
Right.
Emma Lou gave it 3 stars and said, not the best book in the series. In fact, the Doctor and his companions barely do anything to move the plot. It would have gone about the same if they weren't there. I'm reading the books to find out about all the old episodes of the Doctor, so it was a bonus that it was a quick read, and I was able to get through it quickly. That's for damn true.
Feel you there.
Yeah. Stormhawk, yes, that's their name, Stormhawk, also gave it 3 stars and said this story could be called The Doctor Meets Silent Spring. The Doctor and his companions spend an afternoon in an English country garden, but in true Doctor Who fashion, they've been shrunk to an inch high. There's a massive Moogie. Moggy, yeah, that's the British word for cat. And a man drunk with the dream of avarice who fails to listen to reason when confronted about his company's new insecticide, which will wreak ecological havoc upon the world, and at an inch high, the Doctor can do little to prevent it, or can he? Do little to prevent it. Oh, Stormhawk. Goodness, you're as bad as I am. Mm-hmm. And finally, Daniel Kukwa, whom we've heard from before, gave him only 2 stars, and says this: I'm afraid this is a rather disappointing effort. The chance to expand upon a small 3-part TV story squandered in favor of a quick and disposable adaptation. That's something we hadn't talked about, but yeah, I find that that's the biggest problem with this, that you could have expanded it.
Oh, totally.
This could have been 150 pages. It wasn't. I'm also unhappy with some of the prickly nature of the TARDIS crew in the opening chapters, especially the handling of Barbara's character. It's all rather contrary to the close nature of the Time Travelers by the start of the 2nd season. This could have been so much more. It's by far Terrance Dicks' most disappointing effort since his novelization of Kinda. Yeah, that's going to be years from now when we get to Kinda, but yeah. So, I'm going to ask you, out of 5 stars, what would you give this, Alyson?
It's all about expectations. When I read The Bell Jar, I was expecting it to be just like one of my favorite things ever. And it was pretty good, but nothing like what I was expecting it to be.
Yeah, me too.
I thought this was going to be the sorriest piece of garbage I would ever read. And it was surprisingly entertaining, couple of hours. So I'd give it like a full 1.5, possibly 2 if I had a second beer.
A whole 1.5?
No, I thought it would be like half a star. Like 1.5 to 2, sure. So,
Wow.
maybe that's overly generous, but I thought it was fun.
No, I think the reason we're reacting that way is because that's the lowest score we've ever given a book.
Oh!
Yeah.
Well, okay, but if the
you're
Goodreads
right.
scale is all of literature, it's going to be really... All right, I have an allergy to adaptations. I hate them with a passion.
Okay.
If I had seen this episode, I would have been psychologically incapable of reading this.
Really?
So this is the opposite of, well, for example, my husband read all or many of the Star Trek novelizations growing up.
Mm-hmm.
Because, he explains it as, even when it was coming on 5 days a week in the afternoon, it would be months or maybe even years till you hit that episode again.
Yeah, true.
And it was the only way of sort of revisiting it.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't have that experience with any show that was no longer available or wouldn't be available that I loved that much at that age. So I just hate the whole concept at its very core. Mm-hmm. So for me to give a full star at all is kind of amazing, and 1.5 is really generous.
Yeah.
So,
Okay, I would agree
in
with
context,
that.
if that makes sense.
I would agree with that. Dalton?
Yeah, I'm there with you though. I'm like 1.5, 2 stars, which is the lowest I've given.
Yeah.
I'm usually pretty generous, but this one, like I said, this just doesn't have anything going on in it. It really is. It's 84 pages of nothing.
Yeah.
But it could have been so much worse.
It could have.
It could have
Anyways.
been.
It could have, and later on we will get worse.
Yeah. Well, and even
Yeah.
there were other books that we've recorded that I didn't enjoy as much as this, but this one just seems like a waste of space. So that's why, to me, it's like...
You're talking about Keys of Marinus.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that book is just like, bleh, and yet there's a lot going on.
There's a lot going on. There's a lot to it. So, even before I said, reading the back of Keys of Marinus, it had a lot going on. Reading the back of this book, it sounded like it would have a lot going on, and it didn't. There's just it's nothing. There's nothing.
A dead guy, an operator, a giant fly, a dead cat.
And it really, it could be more interesting. It could have been handled, better. There could be more suspense. There could be more, period. There could be more. And there's not. So, yeah.
I like that it was fairly simple, though. That there weren't a lot of plot machinations that were unnecessary to try to make it more, quote, interesting, end quote, but with the same thin characterizations.
Yeah. And that's a point, because sometimes I think I'm probably a little harsher on these books than I should be, because I think a good yardstick for novelization is one that adds significantly to what's on screen.
Yeah.
If you're just getting script to page, then you're basically better off just putting the DVD in the DVD player and watching it, if there's not much there. Which is why I loved Reign of Terror so much.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I slept through the story. But the book is like, oh my god, this is fantastic.
There's a lot more going on.
There's much more going on. And Aztecs, same thing. It's a fantastic story, but also it's very script to page. But Lucarati, who I usually just, shit on constantly, actually added some stuff to it.
Yeah.
And the stuff was really interesting, like the mention of Jesus, for instance. I was like, whoa, that came out of nowhere, but it works.
Yeah.
Here, the extra stuff is Hilda and Bert. It's like, oh my god.
There's really very little Hilda and Bert content. It just was so aggravating and irksome to you.
Well, it's aggravating and irksome
because
I remember the televised versions of them, and they're fine. I mean, it's just some, elderly British couple, and that's perfectly fine. But by the same token, to have more of them, it's like, okay, there was a very good reason why they got cut. There's a very good reason why this is a 3-parter, not a 4-parter. It really should have been a 2-parter. And this book, at however long it was, 118 pages, it's not even that long, 112 pages, is actually a bit long.
Do you feel like that they're in there as a kind of like conflict resolution? As a way of, the doctor can't do anything, but this, couple that just so happens...
This two-person village can do...
Right, that just happens to stumble upon all the clues to put this thing together.
They are a plot contrivance.
Yeah.
And Daniel Kukwa, when he says... I think it was Daniel Kukwa. Someone said something along the lines of, they need not have even been there. It wasn't Daniel Kukwa, it was the other one. Sorry, I'm not giving credit where credit is due. Emilu said they barely did anything and they need not have been there. The only thing that would not have happened had they not been there is the exploding can.
Yeah.
And the cop was still coming because Hilda listened in on the conversation. This still would have ended up the same way. So yeah, it could have been much more interesting. I would have liked a little more literary flourishes, like Ian looked at the striations and the concrete and realized how beautiful they were, and from his, from his perspective as a 1-inch person, he realized that he'd never look at this the same way again. It's like, that would have been corny, but it would have been nice.
Yeah, it would have had a...
It doesn't happen. So instead we get a book that's 1.5 stars. For me, anyway. Yeah. I would definitely agree. Oh, well. They can't all be winners, can they?
No.
Oh, well.
But that's the point of reading them, is to discuss them.
Yes, exactly. Well, thank you, guys.
Yeah.
And thank you, fellow time travelers, for giving us your valuable time, even for a book like this. Next time, we continue our double-dicking with yet another Terrance Dicks joint. And this one is, indeed, Doctor Who and the Dalek Invasion of Earth. like I said last time.
Sorry.
Yes, thank you, Dalton. In the meantime, if you liked what you've heard here, like us on Facebook. If you had a comment on that page, if there's something that you think we missed here, you just want to tell us you like us in words, you'll be entered in our next Target book giveaway. The last one didn't get given away, so I still have a copy of Doctor Who and the War Games to give away. It's that same copy. Someone can have it, but you have to comment either on Facebook or on Reddit, our subreddit. So please check our Facebook page at Doctor Who Target Book Club Podcast, all in word with no spaces, for more details. Our subreddit is at www.reddit.com/r/DW-TargetBC. Also, feel free to give us a thumbs up on YouTube, follow us on Twitter, we're at DWTargetBC, or subscribe to us via the podcast provider of your choice. We are on, deep breath, iTunes, SoundCloud, Stitcher, and TuneIn, and hopefully by the end of the month we'll be on Podbean as well. Podbean, indeed, if I can figure out how to make the damn thing work. If you really like us, or you really, really don't like us, post your comments, suggestions, questions on any of the above platforms, or email us at dwtarget@gmail.com. Thank you very much for listening, and enjoy your travels. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye. People are going to comment in the persona of Bert. You'll have a troll who just goes by the name of Bert.
Of course we will, because we get trolled all the time. No,
You do?
we don't. No one ever talks to us.